giving it some deep contemplation, that a way to share about patience, it just seems so natural to me anyway, is to talk about impatience. And the reason why I'm mentioning this before the talk is maybe just be helpful to notice in practice what comes up. Like, it can be wonderful. Maybe there's a relationship between patient and settled. And if there's unsettled, is it related to just feeling a little bit impatient? And even noticing that, noticing any kind of agitation or any kind of calm, that's really a part of the practice. So if there is some kind of busyness, just by noticing it, certainly would want everyone to do their own practice, and invitation to do whatever practice that is part of your tradition, since we're kind of a multi-traditional meditation center. One guidance that I like to share is, if there is a lot of thinking, to just note, like, oh, there's thinking. Because once we notice it, we're no longer lost in it. We're no longer completely absorbed or carried away, because we've actually observed it, and we change relationship with the busyness just by observing. And we might fall back into it, but every time we come back and just note, oh, there's thinking. And typically when there's thinking, it's our mind just trying to help us. It's trying to do something helpful, even if it doesn't seem like it. That's what the brain apparently is trying to help us all the time. So we can thank it, give it a smile, come back to following some anchor, if you like to follow the breath, or something that's right for you. Jokai, who's our guiding teacher, gave out an assignment to everybody. So I was happy to receive the assignment of patience, and thought, how ironic, because I don't know if I'm the most patient person. But that's actually, I think, a really good thing for sharing. So I can be extremely patient. It just gave me the opportunity to do some self-reflection, which I think is very important before I were to then reflect with others, to share on this topic. And so, as some of you may know, that for 10 weeks we're doing talks on, it's called the paramis or paramitas. Sometimes they're referred to as the perfections. And there's different Buddhist traditions. The Theravadan Buddhist tradition has a list of 10. And Mahayana, other tradition, have like a list of 6. And we're doing 10. So if you have been here for some, or if you've been here for none, welcome. Really, we can only talk about one at a time. And some of the others, just a few we've explored, is generosity, virtue, which could be considered like ethics, effort, the effort we put into something, wisdom, and then this week is patience, next week is truthfulness, and there's a few more. So welcome everybody. And this idea, they call them perfections, sounds really kind of a proper thing, the 10 perfections, but this doesn't mean that we have to be perfect at all. It's actually it's kind of like a qualification or a terminology to have an aspiration to become better at one of these qualities. So more like a compass, for example. Like say we might point the compass in one direction, and it's going to point us there, but we're not expected to get there like tomorrow or be perfect about it. It's just like setting a path or a direction towards one of these qualities. So the perfection of patience is my assignment. And this idea of, as we cultivate any of the paramis, that it can be certain like human characteristics that we all have, certain qualities. Sometimes people call them spiritual qualities or spiritual characteristics that can really develop like more wholeness and well-being in our lives. So it can be a very practical, everyday thing. It's like I'm going to focus on well, how practical it would be to be better at patience. Anybody have any thought on that? Anybody here ever impatient? So, and how would it be if we had, greater patience in our lives? And how many ways, it can show up? So I know I'm not perfect at patience, and it seemed better. I definitely got a little hung up on talking about patience. And I realized, I can talk a lot about impatience, and that's actually, I think, a great doorway in, and maybe it seems from even some of what I was looking into about this parami of patience, is that this is a great doorway to reduce dissatisfaction, suffering in our lives that are related to impatience. So to actually be awake and aware and notice impatience can be a doorway towards a freedom from impatience and all the kinds of dissatisfactions that come from impatience. So along with impatience, it could also include just feelings in the body. Anybody have certain sensations about what impatience feels like? So it could be thoughts, or it could be feelings. I feel impatience, or I have mental impatience. I see some folks shaking their head. It could definitely relate, for me anyway, to resistance, resisting things, to have feelings of discomfort in the body. It could relate to anxiety or worry about something in the future that I'm impatient about, or with a bit of unknowing. It can be related to kind of very unpleasantness. Sometimes it can be fine too, because we're just impatient. But how many different levels can it mean in our lives? So interesting about a little bit about, I looked into the definition. I'm really into word meaning and the root of words. So the word patience, ironically, coming from Latin, P-A-T-I, pati, it means suffering. And so there's this connection to the word suffering, even within the word patience, which evolved into kind of the opposite. It's we're kind of no longer suffering. We're no longer impatient, which can be a good thing. So it's the definition from I'm just trying to give right credit. The Oxford English American Dictionary defines patience as the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. And so it's not like a Buddhist dictionary. This is a regular dictionary, but I thought that's such a great description. So the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry or upset. And so that opposite, it's has anybody ever gotten angry or upset before? And how this can relate to impatience, and how does that feel in our body, and how often it might happen in everyday life. So it does seem wow, this is a great area to focus in on. If I can be more patient, if others could be more patient with me, because when people are impatient with us, it doesn't feel good. You can feel that as well. So impatience, along with the definition for impatience, I know I had it somewhere, but it pretty much is the opposite of patience. But it also, in the dictionary, the definition of impatience included irritability and restlessness. And for anybody who may be familiar with what's called the 5 hindrances that are taught in Buddhism, depending upon what order, but restlessness and worry, or restlessness and remorse, is one of the hindrances. So in a way, this idea of the opposite, or the absence of impatience, could be really tied to what's considered one of the big hindrances for clarity and clear seeing, and even spiritual growth, because it's hard to really think clearly, to see clearly, when we're irritable, when we're restlessness, when we're worried. And so this may be true of being impatient. And this includes agitation. One of my favorite teachers I remember saying, if you feel agitation, that's a place to start practice. Like if you really feel agitated, because it's kind of suffering, or dukkha, which is the term for suffering in this ancient language people claim to have been spoken by the historic Buddha. So dukkha, or suffering, is really tied into this agitation that can come up. So examples, I thought, gee, what would be some examples of impatience? Like there's a list that could go on for a really long time. But it could just simply be, because we're here as a meditation group, that maybe in meditation that is a part of, there may be moments where we take a few breaths, or several breaths, and we're calm. We feel the steadiness of our physical body. The mind may settle. But there could be a lot of conversation that goes on, and even impatience that arises. So we may actually start to become impatient with following the breath, or connecting with simply being here now. And that might just simply be, I have an impatience habit. Maybe even thinking of it as a habit. And what are some of the causes and conditions? What are some of the activating or triggers for impatience? Something that we can only really explore for ourselves. This is something we could do during meditation. We can see the triggers, see if there's some habits of thinking or something in our life that is a little bit bumpy that's causing impatience. So I'll just tell you, this is a story, I might have mentioned it here because it happened coming to here. It's just a personal, simple, impatient story that I drive from Silver Lake, and I've gotten, I think, give myself a pat on the back that I've gotten really good at getting here, leaving early enough to get here. But this was one day where I was really cutting it close, and the traffic, it grew. So even if I had a good estimate, I was really running late. I had about 5 minutes, and I was over on 4th Street, 4th, and I forget the name of the street. But I had to make a left turn, right where there's like an egg restaurant. I have the image in my head. Maybe someone from Long Beach knows. And there was somebody, and I was feeling really impatient or anxious because I didn't want to be late. And I was hoping that every light would be green. And at 4th Street, the light was green. I could see it up ahead. But then to the left, there was a person about to cross the street who was in a wheelchair. And I thought, oh no, not that. And it was sort of like this impatience that just took over. And then thinking like, I laughed at myself because it was kind of like not the most virtuous thing. And I kind of laughed with just sense of humor, because the last thing I wanted to do was drive into somebody who, was in a wheelchair. And I did gather myself, and I was very patient. And I thought, well, being late is perfectly fine. And this is a moment where, just meeting that moment, I found humor, but it was actually a very big learning moment for me. Like just to relax and let go, and to be compassionate to this person and to myself at the same time. And I feel like that, it's not the prettiest portrait of myself to share, but it's the truth, it's what happened. And it relates to, what are many different qualities of impatience. And I thought, even if anybody is inspired here in person or on Zoom, anybody brave enough to share an example of impatience? Yes?
It's kind of, the experiences I can think of is kind of being out of sync with the flow that's going around you.
Being out of sync with the flow that's around you.
Yeah, and sometimes people say, hey, you have to go slow to be able to go fast. And I guess the example I would use would be a beautiful morning of surf, and going out to surf and being so anxious and impatient to get out to it. You're out of the flow, you're out of sync with what's actually going around with you. You can't enjoy the moment until you kind of slow down into what's happening. Yeah. So dropping away from that impatience to kind of match the rhythm, what's happening around you.
Yeah, that's great. So just maybe if I got it, the idea of being impatient is being out of flow with what's happening.
Yeah.
Wanting, and this is a really great example in the description. I had to write a description for the talk. And it is a key component of what I want to share, is wanting the moment to be different than it actually is. And that can be like a core teaching right there for not just impatience, but what we refer to in as dukkha or suffering, wanting the moment to be different than it actually is, and not accepting, not to say we have to accept, but allowing or be aware and a form of flow with what is happening. Because obviously if there is something that's unpleasant, we want to shift towards something healthy. We can have a choice to change things often, but not always. So yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Anything that comes up? Yes?
So, people that have ever dealt with body pain, I had an accident with the medication, and it made my body very sore, and the tendons took years to heal. And
Oh.
It,
So I'm just going to repeat this and if I got it wrong, please correct. So you had an accident, and you were in pain, and you took medication.
the medication caused the accident.
Oh, the medication caused the accident.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to heal.
It took a long time, and I want to feel better. I want this to be gone. I'm ready for.
You're just ready to be healed and better.
I'm ready to feel good. Ready for things to get back to the way they were.
So do you think that added on to, that impatience added on to suffering, or?
It was like, yeah, it was fuel
It was fuel.
to the fire.
So impatience was fuel for suffering. Like it's a great metaphor. It's not the prettiest one, but I know it can be helpful because it's so direct in classes I teach that, we can basically, it's like putting lighter fluid or fuel on a fire. Like, and what is it that we do that we're adding to our suffering? Aside from what's going on in the world, right? And it's our relationship with it. Like, what is our relationship with things that arise, and do we add to it? So thank you for sharing. And how much the simple topic of patience can bring that out. Yeah, thank you. I have found some obstacles. I found common obstacles to cultivating patience in daily life. And it's kind of some modern reflection, so I'm going to look at my notes a little bit more. One is that we live in an instant gratification culture. So there's this instant gratification. The prevalence of technology and fast-paced lifestyles fosters impatience by conditioning us to expect immediate results. Like, some of us are old enough to remember just simply what was life like. Because most of us are probably old enough that we had modern things, right? We've all lived with modern things, but some of us might have been old enough to remember before there were remote controls for things, remote control television. So imagine just even that, like having to get up and change the channel. We just have this expectation. Or what about, let's say, instant deliveries? I won't name a brand, but there's different, incredible overnight delivery services of all kinds. Like these expectations, like what if that gets delayed? I had something that was delayed for like a week. And then I went to visit my sister, and it was a watch, and then I didn't have, because my watch broke, so I didn't, that was like a drama. It was okay. But then it just made me have to look at my phone for the time more. But so this idea of instant deliveries, like how impatient can we have, because we're conditioned now. As if we weren't conditioned before. Think how conditioned we might be now. Or fast internet. If you ever have your internet slow down, or you're somewhere where it's really slow. I don't have time for this website. I'm just going to move on to the next one. Or fast travel. Like we just take it for granted because we're not walking. But at the same time, many of us love riding bikes and love walking, and it's a beautiful thing. So I acknowledge and know that many of us probably can be the opposite, to be fine with longer deliveries, be fine with slow or no internet. I mean, what a blessing when it goes down and we can detox for a while, but it can be traumatic or dramatic for some people. I teach on campus at UC Irvine, and just astounding to me how I don't know how students don't get in accidents, because they're always have their phone in front of them. And I'm picking on UC Irvine, not because it's just the place where I teach. It's like that's where I see it so dramatically. And I'm sure we've all seen that other places. So other areas of common obstacles might be unrealistic expectations, like setting some rigid, idealized expectation for a situation. It can lead to frustration when it doesn't align, this reality doesn't align. So something that I have learned over time, that expectations can be one of the greatest forms of suffering. It's like, I expect this, and expectations seem important. Like we should have expectations, but when they're not, some of them aren't met, things seem to fall apart. And we can lose patience. There's also desire for control is another on the list, that impatience can arise when we actually resist accepting situations as they are, which we talked about a little bit earlier. And it depends on the individual, but we probably all have times where we want to have control. We want to have control of a situation. We might want to have control of something. It could be, the temperature of the room. Is it too hot or too cold? Or it could be outcomes with other people's behavior. Whether we're a boss, maybe at work, we want people to be doing things, or if we are our family, our friends, our neighbors. Like I often will share that my neighbor has chickens, and so I find like I would like to control, like when, especially as it becomes closer to the summer, because they wake up with the sun. And there's ducks. There's a couple of ducks and there's a couple chickens. So I do have to, over years of a lot of negotiation, she did all kinds of and loving kindness practice to her and to her and the birds. So control, and then stress and overcommitment, like a busy or overwhelmed mind. This is a really big one, I think, for me and maybe some others. If you have too much on your plate, if you say yes too much, and you're a kind person, but maybe even that kindness can get in the way because we overcommit, that being busy or overwhelmed can create struggles, and it can make it harder to respond calmly. And I wanted to share this story. It could also create challenges, like just as briefly as possible, I try to do this. There was research a few decades ago at a seminary school where people were studying to be some form of minister, something that would be caregiving spiritually. And I am not in any way, shape, or form a scholar in biblical studies, but there's a story called the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan was somebody who helped people along the way back in ancient biblical times, people who were struggling. And so the seminary students were given the assignment to give a talk on the Good Samaritan, about the person who would help people along the way. And they did a control group where like 50% of them were held back from giving their talk. Somehow they delayed them. And then they planted somebody between the class that they were at and where they were to give their talk, and had somebody along the way like laying there needing help. Exactly the situation of the Good Samaritan. But they were delayed to give this very important talk, and it was something about 20% of them stopped to help the person. The other 80% walked right past. So the other 50% were not delayed. They weren't delayed to go give their talk, and it was kind of something like the opposite. Like 80% of them stopped to help the person, and 20% kept going. And so this idea that everybody with good intentions, like, may, because of some delay, something that we get caught in some kind of it kind of goes back to that last topic, stress and overcommitment. That if we're too busy, we can have an overwhelmed mind. The mind becomes very self-oriented. Just the I, me, and my that is taught about in Buddhism. A little bit more just kind of gets dialed up. And caring for even ourselves and others can get dialed down because of this kind of stress. And it's another area, a common obstacle to cultivating patience. So there's more. Just the last that I'll share are just some emotional triggers. There are people, and probably most of us have some trauma of some sort, some more than others. Unresolved anger issues, habitual irritability can amplify impatience. Maybe some of us can relate to that, or a loved one or family member or friend who's just impatient and gets angry. And it's something that can be deep. And so moving on to just recognizing, this idea of recognizing these obstacles, which is awareness, mindful awareness that we can develop, to have the intention. Say, I have the intention to develop the perfection of patience. Of course, we don't have to be perfect. It's just the term that we use. We can use a characteristic or a spiritual characteristic of patience. Like I'd like to set the intention to be better at that. And I'm doing that in front of all of you today. And how many of these categories, and there might be many more, are affecting that might be something to become more aware of. Just so shining a light of awareness on impatience can be the doorway to be more patient. And recognizing the obstacles that we can, as I mentioned earlier, we can, just by noticing there's a busy mind is a lot different than being lost in the busy mind. So I'm completely lost. It's like being in a closet with the door shut. Like I'm lost in here. Or being on a train of thought that's speeding, 200 miles an hour. And then it's suddenly like, oh, I'm lost in thought. And just, so it's like, that's what can happen. I don't know about your experience of meditation, but just noticing like, oh, I drifted. And that's the moment we have that mindful awareness. We wake up. And the awareness, we change relationship with anything that we're lost in, including impatience. So that in itself can be huge. It's like a huge difference between unaware and aware. And that's the first step. So awareness is the first step for transitioning. And these could be really habitual responses that we've built these deep conditioned grooves our whole lives. So it could be a point where we stop and take a breath. Like stop and take a breath. Take a few breaths instead of overreacting. This is where responding consciously, taking the quote that regardless of who it's attributed to, there's in between stimulus and response that there is a space. So it could be between some kind of trigger and our response, that there's a space, and that if we can pause in that space, it can really give us some incredible power. So this is really the power of simply awareness, and we like to refer to this as mindful awareness, but it can come from compassion, come from the heart. And so observing our experiences and reflecting, like how is this affecting, is my response, if we do have that ability to reflect before we respond, and that it'll be a wholesome response as opposed to some reactive response. And if has anybody had that kind of reactive response in a conversation that they've regretted? So it can be, like if you ever have broken a bone, but it heals. Anybody have that? But we might actually do something like have a regrettable comment that could take years, or not heal at all, just from how we overreact emotionally. And I had learned from a teacher, Eve Ekman, who's an emotional awareness expert, a Buddhist practitioner and teacher, and she refers to them as regrettable emotional events, and they can be really hard to heal from, and something that with patience and practice, to pause between that stimulus and the response, and to learn, to look and learn. When we do have a regrettable emotional event, it could be a response to review and regret for several years. And that just makes it worse. It's kind of adding on. It's kind of like a ghost that haunts us. So an option is be aware of that even. Like, oh, here's like a wound from something I did, to look and learn. So either am I reviewing and regretting, or could I look and learn and move on and be better, to move towards patience, mindful awareness, compassion, equanimity, balance of mind, so many other great heart qualities that are taught about non-harming in Buddhist teaching. So the awareness is that first step, and I want to read from a couple teachers on the pyramids. The one who's what I had become aware of from a few people, and there's a teacher named Ajahn Susito who is in the Theravada tradition, and he's wrote a book on the pyramids. He refers to it as paramid, ways to cross life's floods. So even any of these overreactivities or hindrances can be considered like a flood, like the mind gets flooded, and how each one of the pyramids can be a way to cross the floods of life. And so he describes patience as a powerful practice of holding steady amidst life's challenges, allowing the mind to open and understand suffering without reacting impulsively. He emphasizes that patience is not passive resignation. We're not just being patient and doing nothing, passive resignation, but an active process of staying present with discomfort, fear, or frustration until the heart lets go of its resistance. And then there's the historic Buddha. A teaching attributed to the historic Buddha is from the Dhammapada, which is a collection of Buddha's teachings. And it's just one simple quote. Patience is the highest practice of endurance. And so that patience isn't just passive. It's kind of getting back to what Ajahn Susita was saying. It's not passive, it's a powerful and active strength. It's like a power. And it could be a superpower if we really perfect it. Think about that. It's like, wow, patience is a superpower. What an aspiration to maybe get to that point. I wish I could be 100% patient. How aware and awake to be patient all the time. Maybe it's synonymous with like a great awakening that many people are practicing towards. And so patience isn't passive. It's a powerful, active form of strength, one that allows us to meet difficulty with steady and a compassionate heart. So transforming impatience and resistance, just as I'm coming to a close, that there is the teachings, there's so many great teachings, different traditions. One part of the Eightfold Path is quite popular in the Theravada tradition, that one of those components, one of the path factors, is called right effort. And right effort is a way that we can engage with our experience skillfully. So it has 4 components to it. So I thought I would just do a really brief share on how this can be beneficial in terms of developing and cultivating patience, something that we have within us already. It's already there. I think of the body that's stable and steady, like this. I'm fairly able-bodied with lots of chronic pain, but the body stable and steady is kind of a form of patience, even though my mind might be spinning. So it's interesting. It's like they can coexist. There can be patience and impatience all at the same time. I find that fascinating. I guess we have to explore for ourselves. But if I can feel like, oh yeah, my body's patience is kind of peaceful. Yeah, there's kind of a lot of busy in the head. It depends also, where do we put all of our attention? Do we put it on the busy mind, or can we shine a spotlight to our full sensations of the still and steady, and maybe the body is peaceful, that we could be as sort of an inspiration. So wise effort is to know what it is to be impatient in this example. So there's 4 components. One is to prevent. Is there a way I can prevent some kind of unwholesome behavior? Here we're talking about impatience. How can I prevent impatience? Maybe I'll leave earlier, right? Like talking about the story of the Good Samaritan research. Or I'll if I'm not in such a hurry at the intersection, I won't have that impatience when somebody's crossing the street with a wheelchair. So to leave earlier? How can I foster and prevent, so impatience? And how can I overcome it when it does arise? And be this idea of taking, like I have practiced quite a bit. I'm going to take a breath. Oh, there's impatience. Take a breath. Yeah, I can see I really do want the moment to be different than it actually is. I can see that. But what is the most wholesome way to be in this moment is to cultivate compassion for myself, for the person crossing the street, and just to pause, to overcome the impatience. That's one example. And then also to cultivate. Can we cultivate compassion? Can we cultivate equanimity? Cultivate calm? And then to maintain that, to have some level of maintaining it. And those are the 4 components of wise effort for just about anything. To prevent something that's unwholesome, before it arises, to overcome it when it has arisen. Oh, I see you have arisen. So prevention could be a whole change of life and change of how we do things. But the overcoming is the wisdom to see something has arisen that we can wisely and mindfully overcome. And then the other 2, to cultivate, to constantly be cultivating, like the heart practices, peace, calm, love, and then to maintain that as a possible default new way of being in our lives as much as possible, to cultivate being a patient person. And there's always going to be things that will jolt us and cause impatience. I'm certain of that. But what a wonderful, lovely aspiration to move further from it, and how many repercussions that impatience causes in categories. And I hope that some of my reflection has brought some reflection that you can learn or share from. Just bringing some compassionate awareness to our humanness, and certainly impatience is one of those. But shining a bright light and having the aspiration, the inspiration, the intention towards the perfection of patience. So that's kind of coming to the close of my talk, and we have a little time if anyone has any comments or questions.
I have always tried to remember, and I don't remember where I heard this, but try to be grateful to those people or situations that really test your patience, because it helps you become a more patient person. Doesn't always work, but...
Yeah, grateful to people who test your patience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not easy.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yes?
I have a recurring problem with patience. Because I'm disabled, people automatically stop and want to help me. And I really get angry. Like, I'm doing my thing and I'm not having any difficulty. Everything is fine. And they stop and want to help me. And instead of being grateful and thanking them, I become grumpy, mumble stuff, and it's just completely crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it's coming from.
And you're aware of it.
I'm very aware.
Well, it's a lot different than if you weren't aware of it. I think that's a great start. Yeah. And so something to practice with for sure. Even, I don't know, sometimes bringing a sense of humor to your own grumpiness or lightheartedness and friendliness. Like it could be something like, typically our minds are just trying to help us. There's something there, it's just trying to help you somehow.
Yeah.
And to befriend that in some way.
Yeah.
And befriend the other person.
Yeah.
Like goodwill, loving kindness, or
I know
gratitude.
They're displaying loving kindness spontaneously. I'm French, and so I'm thinking that this is something that I didn't grow up with, and I probably have a hard time accepting this kind of. In American famous for this kind of kindness, spontaneous kindness.
And how does kindness feel when you receive it?
It feels great, really.
And when you resist it?
It feels terrible.
So which one might be the better alternative?
Turn around and say, oh, thank you, yes.
Well, which one feels good? That actually can be like just a path, like just don't take it from me, but which one feels better? Maybe that would be the something to practice. Definitely practice,
The
because
one
it's
that would feel better would be the one where I'm looking at the person in the eyes and thanking them. Acknowledging them as a person.
yeah. Well, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that very much. Driving, I think, is we could talk about driving in terms of Dharma and teaching for every day, I'm sure. It's such a great...
And then similarly, like, somebody driving slow in front of me, and then I'm just like, why are they driving so slow? I have somewhere I need to be, and then realizing that, like, oh, it's me, that, like, I'm in a hurry, not that they're, like, they are driving slow, but it's not a problem that they're driving slow, it's a problem that I'm trying to get somewhere fast.
Right?
Yeah.
And
See,
so,
that involves the ego. It's all about ego.
It's all very helpful to how you feel it in your body, too. These are like embodied practices to actually, we're in our heads, but also how does that feel in the body, and how tightly are you holding the steering wheel, and how fast do you accelerate when you change your mood, and, because we're actually, the car becomes part of us. To actually tune into that is part of practice for developing patience. Like I said, which one feels better? Being patient, or if we're in a hurry, like being late, it change, like that's one of the examples. It like changes everything. That Good Samaritan story.
Hi, my name's Tim. It's the generosity of people like you that make these videos possible. If you had some benefit from the video and feel an urge to donate, you can make a donation here. If you're interested in seeing more because you're curious, you can click here and see more videos. And if you're interested in subscribing to Long Beach Meditation, you can click here. Thank you so much for your attention. Take care.